Mash. Huh? Whoa, it's spinning.
name is Stephanie. Welcome to Edible Thoughts Makes. This is my channel where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things the kids say. My hope is that as you watch previous episodes and this episode that you will find some inspiration along the way. This is episode 11. Happy New Year. This is the first week of January 2020. I had lots of finished projects in December, but the majority of them I cannot show you because they were gifted off for Christmas. I do have a couple of them here that were for myself, so I can show you those, and I have lots of works in progress to show you. Some of them I believe I casted on in December. There's one project that I did over the summer that I'm going back and revising a little bit, and then I have a few that I have casted on recently and some that I am excited to cast on sometime in this month or next month. So let's get started. Should we start with the two finished projects that I have? You've heard me talk about them in the past. They are socks. I am so excited. So in 2019, I started knitting socks. I got some books from the library. I started in August, and it just kind of snowballed. It was so fun. It was like a small manageable project that I could carry around with me, and I did not get second sock syndrome, which is when you knit one sock and then you don't knit the other one. I think for me, just finishing one sock and then starting the second one right away helped a lot. And since I was still learning, it was like I would do the first sock and be like, okay, I get it now. And then I would do the second sock to, I wouldn't say perfect it, but it was like a second chance to like do it again. So that was reassuring and gave me confidence to keep knitting more socks. These are my R&R socks. Pattern is by Mars at Hey Brownberry. How fun are these? They have a textured top and a striped bottom. My striping is pretty subtle because of the colors that I chose. Here you can see the second sock is a little different. The yarn I chose was a marled gradient, and it came out really fun. They fit really nicely. They are a toe-up sock with a fleagle heel and then a ribbed cuff. It does come in 3 sizes. I knit the smallest size, and they fit very comfortably. The other pair of socks I would like to show you are my Kia socks. These ones I started in the fall, but I finished them up before the year was over. I absolutely adore these socks too. These also have a texture along the leg all around, and then it's just on the top of the foot, and then the bottom is stockinette. These are knit cuff down, and I did a contrast cuff and a contrast toe, and I left the heel matching with the rest of the sock. It's a heel flap gusset with those slip stitches, and I really like how this yarn worked up. This is by Shawls at Serendipitous Wool, and these socks are just the epitome of autumn, my favorite season. Don't tell the other seasons. I like them too, but I really like fall. I just love these, and these fit so nice. This is my first pair of socks that I knit with such a fine wool, and it feels like I'm wearing silk socks. Although I've never had silk socks before, so I'm not exactly sure what they would feel like, but it's what I would imagine they would feel like. They're so silky, they're lightweight, and these are actually really warm. So I absolutely adore these socks. They are so fun. So these are my 2 socks, finished pair of socks, and I finished off 2019 casting off a pair of socks, and I started 2020 casting on a pair of socks, actually 2 pairs of socks. One is for one of my daughters and one is for me. So I can say that 2020 will probably have lots of socks. I am planning on scaling back some of the sweater knitting in 2020. I knit a lot of sweaters in 2019, and I am looking forward to knitting a lot more socks in 2020 and shawls. Shawls were kind of intimidating to me in 2019. They just seemed so big, and I guess you don't actually have to knit shawls that big that take like 5 skeins of fingering weight yarn. You can knit them in 600 yards, which is like 1.5 skeins, or some skeins come bigger in like 600 plus yards of fingering weight. But then there's DK weight yarns, and there's different ways to substitute in colors and weights that can really help you make it your own. So I'm really excited to delve a little more into shawl knitting. Probably not a lot into lace knitting because I still don't love it, but I will talk a little bit about what works for me in lace knitting and one of my other works in progress that includes some lace knitting. So let's see. The next thing I would like to show you. So I guess a segue from finished projects into works in progress is a finished project that is now again a work in progress because I am doing a little bit of alteration to it. So it is my Studio 54 crop by Shay Johnson, and I knit this over the summer in August. I started in August, finished in September. I was test knitting this. So here it is. It's kind of like a faux wrap sweater. So it wraps across the front, it crosses in the front, but the bottom is actually seamed together so it doesn't open all the way. And I will include some finished photos, like modeled photos of this, either up here if I can figure out how to put it there, or at the end of the video because I do know how to do that. So I have this sleeve here. You can tell it used to end right here, and it would end about here, 3/4 length, and I felt like I wanted it longer, and so I took out my bind off, and then I picked those stitches up as I went with DPNs, or double pointed needles, and then once I picked them up, I put in a stitch marker on that first stitch, and then I continued the ribbing from there. So I think this is close to 6.5 inches now, versus before it was like 1.5 inches, and now it goes all the way to the end of my arm, to like my wrist. And then what I like about that is if I do want it 3/4 length sleeves, I can fold it up and have it 3/4 length sleeves there. Also, I found my bind off a little bit tight for where it was on my arm, since the circumference is wider here than here. If I really wanted to, I could have taken it all the way back to the sleeve before the decreases for the ribbing and extended the sleeve length and then done the ribbing, but I felt like I liked the look of the long ribbing in that section, so I didn't take it all the way back. It wasn't too tight here, it was more so it was tight where I bound off, so then I just increased that. So my second sleeve I'm still working on. I have taken out the bind off, put those stitches on the double pointed needles, and started my ribbing. So I am very excited about that. Hopefully I will get that project finished in the next couple of days. It doesn't take too long to do all that ribbing because there aren't that many stitches. You're just going around and around and around. So I will show you next we'll see in here. These are socks I'm working on for one of my daughters. I finished one already. The benefit of knitting kids socks is they're really small, so they knit up very quickly. Here's the self-patterning yarn I'm using. It is super fun. The kids picked it out themselves. And here's one finished sock. How fun is that? What I love about the self-patterning yarn is that it keeps it interesting, just like color work does, without having to do the color work. Not that I don't like enjoying doing color work. I love doing color work. But sometimes it's nice to have the yarn do it for you. So I knit this toe up, fleagle heel. The fleagle heel doesn't interrupt the patterning as much. You just have a little bit kind of across here, but it's great for self-patterning or self-striping yarns. And then she wanted a very short leg, so you can see it's pretty short here. In hindsight, I probably could have started the fleagle heel just a little bit earlier and then actually extended the leg by like 5 rounds, but I think it'll fit okay. It's a little bit big on her. If you saw my Instagram post a few days ago, I was asking about doing tube socks, so socks with no heel, so basically just one long tube, and then I don't have to worry about her growing out of the heel, because the heel pretty much limits you on the length of the foot, and a tube sock wouldn't do that. You could just wear it, and as you grew, it would just, the heel would just kind of shift, or the no heel would shift, but I didn't know if the sock would slide down a lot and just not stay on her foot very well. So then by the time I got to the point where I had to decide, I just decided to do the fleagle heel. I don't think any of her socks yet have the fleagle heel. My older daughter has socks I've knit with the fleagle heel, but the younger one hasn't. So we'll try it and see. I feel like the benefit of this fleagle heel versus like a heel flap and gusset with the slip stitches is that even if her foot doesn't quite fit in there, if it goes up a little bit like onto her leg, it's not as obvious as a heel flap and gusset. So I think it should still fit okay. And then of course I leave my stitch markers in so that the second sock can be the same. So here's the beginning of the second sock. Look how fun that toe is. I just love these colors. So the sock I casted on for myself is the Nightwalk socks. The pattern's by Lindsay Fowler. She is on Instagram as Lost and Fond, F-A-W-N-E-D. I don't know if you can see this very well. There is some color work on the top, and it's knit with 2 colors. My size isn't in here for my typical number of cast on stitches, so she recommends just to use a smaller size needle. So this pattern is written for size 1 needles, and you can choose between a medium or a large size for socks, which is 64 stitches or 72 stitch cast on. And then she recommends for a smaller size, just knit the medium size, but then use a US 0 size needle. So that is what I did. Check this out. This yarn is by Christina at Teal Torch Knits. She is incredible with her speckling and bright colors. I love how her colors don't get muddy and they knit up really beautifully. So here's my sock. I just finished getting that heel done. I feel like that's a big turning point in socks for me, either toe up or cuff down. This one is knit cuff down. So here's the top. So this color work repeat is supposed to do 3 times, but I got a little nervous about it fitting over my heel when I tried it on right after doing the first repeat. So then I decided to just not do any more of them and just do 1, and then instead knit out the same number of rounds that I would have knit if I continued the repeat. So I knit that down here, and then I did change to my second color. The heel flap and gusset slip stitch pattern is slightly different in this one than the other ones I've done. And then here is where the foot will go. Isn't that beautiful? Look at those colors. Hold this one closer. This top one is also by Christina at Teal Torch Knits. I believe the colorway is Dirty Pop. It reminds me of that grape soda. And look at those speckles. It's so pretty. I love it so much. I did try it on, and so far it fits really well. I think something that I have to remember is to not knit the foot too long. I get worried about being too small, but then I forget that it stretches. So then if I knit it too long, then you always have that extra fabric there, and I think that can lead to more pilling and the sock wearing out just from the extra friction of it shifting around. But if I knit it slightly, just a little bit smaller than I think it needs to be, then I think it ends up fitting just right. This is the Grain Line Cowl by Tammy Gore. And what is fun about this cowl is that there's a little lace, there's striping, there's color work. It's knit in the round like I prefer. You can use mini skeins if you have those or leftover yarn. And because it's not crucial how you follow the pattern, you can kind of move things around as you wish, depending on maybe your yardage or just what you like in your cowl. So I have passed the lacy part. Yes, I knit lace. So what helped me a lot in knitting the lace section was A, her pattern included it written and charted. So I kind of could check my work between the two. And B, I put in progress keepers after each lace repeat. So then I only had to remember however many stitches for that repeat and not have to count too hard to remember when I had to go again. And then if I made a mistake, it was much easier to tink back to the part that I made a mistake. So I survived the lace section, and then now I'm on the striping. Coral and mauve. Not the most contrast, but subtle and sweet. Now there is lace on the other end of this cowl too, but I'm contemplating skipping that because this cowl is fairly long. Let's see if I have the dimensions here. Blocked measurements and gauge, the length is 22.5 inches and the width is 12 inches or 24 inches in circumference. So I feel like when I'm wearing it, you won't actually see the lace section that much, and if I'm gonna work that hard on the lace section, I'd rather it be seen. So I think what I'll do is just not do the lace section on the other end. I'll try it on and see if the length is where I like it after the last section before the lace, and then I can either just end it there with some ribbing or just do another section of one of the other parts that aren't lace and then go from there. So that's my plan for that. Here is the coral color I'm using for the mane. Here's the mauve color I'm using for part of the stripes. Here's kind of a light pink, cool pink white that I'm going to use in part of the color work. And then some brown too that I will use in there as well. So it's a fun project. I'm enjoying it. I like knitting in the round. And I think it'll be really nice when it's done. Next project I would like to show you is the Gatsby shawl. I have that in my wintry project bag that I made. My goal in 2019 was to get to the next section of this pattern, and I did. This is knit up in this beautiful yarn called Cedar Leaf. And it's by Sam at Lavender Loon Co. This is a fingering weight yarn. So I am at a section where there are a bunch of repeats. So I have all the progress keepers marking each section so I don't get messed up. Oops, I'm holding it backwards. Here is that center spine. And then I have these marking the sides. And then a progress keeper marking the start of that section. And these beautiful markers are by Maria at Woolen Forest. I love her markers so, so much. They are very well crafted, and being a rock collector or gem admirer, these are right up my alley, and nature lover. So you can see the rest of it was all garter, and then now I have this section where it's stockinette. But it's not just stockinette. There are center sections to each of them as well. So hence all the progress keepers. This has been a fun knit as well. This Gatsby shawl is by Dawn at Dawn Landix. And that's what it will end up looking like. I'm in this section over here, and there will eventually be bobbles. So, yep, I'm in the chevron section. We will see how that goes. The next project I want to share with you is one I have not started yet, but it is one that I have yarn assigned to in a project bag with my pattern printed out. This one is the Alejandra by Joji Locatelli. I am so excited about this one. It is a DK weight shawl. Approximate yardage is 750 yards. It is knit on US 8 or 5mm needles. It is a crescent shape. There's a mosaic band at the edging. This shawl, she says, is inspired by her best friend, Alejandra, and their home, Argentina. I will show you the yarn I have picked out for it. Now, my yardage for each skein may not be quite enough, so I'm adding in additional colors that work with the other ones in hopes of making it cohesive still, and I might have to do a little bit of tweaking. So this is one of the colors I will be using. It is a tonal hot pink with some fuchsia and magenta and some peachiness in it. And that will also be paired with this gray tonal yarn that I'll probably end up using a little bit later, maybe in part of the mosaic contrast on the bottom. And then these two are my shining stars for this shawl. They are by Shobha at Serendipitous Wool. This one is Stardust, and this one is Pincushion Urchin. Look at these little speckles in there. There's blue and lime green and some orange. And then this one I can't wait to cake up too. There's just so many colors. It's like an explosion of speckles and colors, and I am loving it. So, I have written out how I want to do my ordering of the colors. We will see how it goes once I get started, but that pattern is printed out, and the yarns are in a project bag, and it is ready to go. So I think that's all I have for knitting. Now, I do have some books I want to share with you. Oh, sorry, one more knitting related, but it's a book. I bought myself the Strange Brew book by Tin Can Knits as my own Christmas present. My local yarn store said they were going to be restocking this book sometime in the fall or winter, and so when I saw it there, I snatched it up. So as you know, 2019 was kind of my year of the colorwork sweater, and if I'm going to knit any sweaters in 2020, they will probably have colorwork in them, and I would love to play around with some of their beautiful recipes in here and make my own. So I'm really excited about this book. The photographs are beautiful. I have already made the Mountain Mist hat here for my family, and I am just really excited to learn and grow my love for colorwork with this book. So, Lunar New Year is quickly approaching. It is on January 25th. We went to the library recently and picked up a bunch of books to read with the kids. They are all on the new year. Growing up, there were a lot of different traditions that we followed, and we did a lot of things just based on whatever my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles kind of told us to do, but I feel like there are some things that we don't fully understand why we do them or the history behind them. So reading some of these books will be a great refresher and learning experience for me and for my husband and for the kids. So I think that'll be really fun. Being connected to our culture, our heritage, and who we are is really important to me and our family. I feel like it helps us better understand where we come from and who we are and who we want to be. Another book that I got from the library is by Grace Lin. It's Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. It is a juvenile fiction book and it was really good. So I read it in 2 hours after the kids went to bed. I had initially read the first chapter or two to the kids and then I couldn't put it down, so I just kept reading. But I will hold on to it so I can read them the rest of the book before I return it to the library. There are 2 other books following this that I will be picking up later. Starry, River of the Sky, and When the Sea Turned to Silver. If you like magic realism, you might like this book. Some of my favorite magic realism authors are Gabriel Marquez, Isabel Allende, and Louise Erdrich, and I feel like this book kind of fits right in there, but as a kids version. And the author, Grace Lin, a lot of her writing is inspired by her travels to Hong Kong and China and Taiwan and by her own heritage. And she does live in the US, and she had mentioned in a part that this book and several of her other books she wished were around when she was a kid growing up, to see people like her, to see people talk about things that she could relate to, and I feel like that is so important and one of the reasons that I'm reading the book and having my kids read them as well. Last thing I wanted to mention is in the beginning of this video there were some clips of like mushrooms and cabbage and fudge. So the fudge we made is from Denise at Earth Tone Girls. Earth Tones Girl. She had posted about fudge making I think in December, and so my daughter and I made it that afternoon. We didn't have white chocolate chips, so we used our semi-sweet chocolate chips, and it turned out really good and really fun. So if you want that simple recipe, go find it on Denise's Instagram. She has it in one of her posts there, and she has it on her YouTube channel as well at Earth Tones Girl. The other thing that you may have caught is I was cutting up cabbage. That is from Deb Perlman's Smitten Kitchen Everyday book. If I can find any of the recipes online, I'll link them below, but otherwise I follow from the cookbook. It was the Caramelized Cabbage Risotto, one of my favorites. It's so good. And then the other one, if you're wondering, from the mushrooms that I was cutting up, is from the other Smitten Kitchen cookbook, and it was the mushroom bourguignon. So if I can find either of those online, I will link them below. But they are some of my favorite dishes to make, and we all really enjoy them. So with that, cheers to being creative. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you have a great start to 2020. If 2019 was a very challenging year, I hope 2020 brings you a little bit of respite, minutes of peace and quiet, and so much joy. So with that, take care.